What's up, guys? It's March, and that means it is time, hopefully where you guys are, for fish to be moving up and starting their kind of spring journey. Some of you guys might even already be past it, but today we are going to talk about our favorite 5 techniques for fishing in the month of March. And really this is going to apply not just to March, but kind of early spring season. So if you'd like to join along, have some fun talking about some tackle, let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Deps, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined this fine morning by my buddy Jeffrey the King. We're the Hookup Tackle USA. Jeff, good morning to you.
You know, early spring, you say, it's 43 degrees out today.
Well, look, today we are feeling like Wisconsin people or Minnesota people. And I know it seems weird to say spring, but you know, the official start of spring is only a couple weeks away, according to my calendar, right? So bass also have this same calendar, right? Temperatures, cold, hot, obviously they have an impact on water temp and fish behavior, but fish really operate under a calendar of moon phases, right? So today we're going to talk about our favorite approaches for catching fish this time of the year. And keep in mind, geographically, depending on where you are, this could vary a lot. Right? Some of you guys might be in the far south where, you know, maybe more power fishing is needed. Some of you might be in the far north and might still be ice fishing. So our March baits may not even apply to you. But this is going to be kind of a broad look at how I approach early season fishing, or how I want to approach early season fishing. So let's kind of dive in. You ready?
All right.
Okay. All right, Jeff, so let's start with where I always like to begin when I'm just kind of searching, and that's with a jerkbait. So there's a gazillion different search tools out there, and everybody, not everybody, but you know, people like different things. I love a jerkbait. I know you and I talk about jerkbait fishing a lot. You love a jerkbait. What is it about a jerkbait that you enjoy? I know you're a swimbait guy, but when you bring yourself down to my level, you do throw conventional stuff very well. What is it about jerkbait that you like?
Well, it's very similar to like a glide bait, and I reference both of those together, where you have to impart the action. And with a glide bait and a jerkbait, some days they want it like this, some days they want it like that, and that's the pleasure I get from fishing these baits, is the figuring out part. Whether they want it fast today, do they want it slow, how long of a pause am I gonna do? Like, I think that stuff is really interesting, and when you dial it in and you figure it out, there's no better feeling than like, oh, okay, I've got them dialed, I know that they want it like this, and you present it to them like that, and you start catching them. Yeah. And it's like, it's really, really fun. Yeah. And when they had a jerkbait on the pause,
oh, dude, it's so sick.
Line just,
it's so
like,
dirty.
Oh, I just got smoked.
Yeah. It's just, and we talk about this a lot because we talk about jerkbaits a lot. It's really one of the more rewarding ways of fishing for me. Right? It's up to us to impart the action, to do all the things you just discussed, right? It's up to us to kind of crack the code so that when you get the bite, we earned it. Yeah. Right? We twitched it, we paused it, we thought about it, we were using the feedback they were giving us. So it's just a really cool way to do it. And the other thing that's nice about jerkbait is you can cover a lot of water pretty quick. Even though your cadence might not be very fast, fish in the area are seeing a jerkbait, right? So I think fish are smart enough to their surroundings to where they always know when anything is coming. So even if you throw a drop shot to a fish that's sitting in 40 feet of water on a reef, it knows when there's a drop shot falling down. It can hear it, it can feel it can hear it on the ground, like it knows it's over there, right? But a jerkbait usually has rattles, it's splash, it's, you know, twitch, there's hooks clacking around, visually they can see it. So, you know, I think a jerkbait is one of those things where if you're not really sure where to start, you can just make a long cast, have an efficient retrieve, make another angle, and just keep going. It's a great way to kind of run bank, run big flats, run big areas, and really just kind of search. But while I'm searching, I'm also kind of watching, right? I mean, we fished a lot of areas up north, like in Wisconsin, Minnesota, where a lot of times you'll just pull fish on a jerkbait, similar to a swim bait, right? And then you'll watch them kind of swim down, and you're like, oh shit, there's a tree down there, or there's a lay down down there, or there's a grass pile down there. And you mark it, and you remember next time you come back, maybe you fish that a little bit different. Maybe you run a square bill through it, or a crankbait, or a worm, or maybe you just make a better cast with your jerkbait so that it forces that fish to react differently. So it's just a great way to get feedback, super fun to catch them. Now, for me, I basically have kind of a two-prong approach to jerkbaits. I'm either throwing a suspending jerkbait, which would be kind of the typical normal approach, or I'm throwing a floating jerkbait. So this is the time of the year that I implement a floater a lot. I'm gonna talk about the difference. If I'm fishing a bigger body of water, it's got a little bit deeper water, maybe there's some wind, maybe there's some breeze, then almost always I'm throwing a suspending bait. Typically for me, these are kind of the two of choice for me for starting out this time of the year. I love an Vision 110 and I love the OSP Rudra. These are kind of like the no-brainers. Now, there's a gazillion good ones. You could throw the Realis 120, you could throw the .100. There's a lot of different options. For me, these two are kind of a good 1-2 punch because they're still a little bit more on the finesse side of things, I would call them, right? So they're not too intrusive, but they make enough movement to where even if it's a windy day, the fish can find them. Color-wise, I keep it pretty simple, and again, this can change regionally based on where you are. If you guys are in muddier water, you'll probably be using more golds and reds and that kind of stuff. I pretty much roll with something in a white pattern. So a stain reaction or a French pearl is usually kind of my starting point. If it's super, super sunny and they're not responding to it, I might go to like a Pro Blue or a Wakasagi. I keep it very, very simple, right? Now, the other thing that's very, very important to note is that we get a lot of cloudy days. So Jeff, you just referenced it's 40 degrees here. It snowed last night. I'm looking outside the window, it's cloudy. This would be the kind of day that I'm throwing a matte finish. Okay, so matte finishes are incredibly important to me in early spring. They just have a different glow and a different presence under the water than something that's glossy or transparent. So there are times when you can get bit on a matte, even in sunny, calm days, but really the matte finishes shine a lot on days like this. They're a little bit darker, not quite that same sun penetration, and the baits just really show up. I'm a sucker for matte Pro Blue. I'm a sucker for Jinrin, right? A matte Wakasagi, anything like that are great options. Now, I'm utilizing the suspending jerkbait really to just cover ground. Okay, it's just kind of my search tool. And again, I'm watching things happen. Now, if I see that the fish have transitioned from their deeper water and they're moving up into shallow water, and either to spawn or just to move up and soak up sunlight. Smallmouth a lot of times will just move up onto really shallow flats and just kind of soak up warmth, right? And just let their bodies warm up. They're not necessarily spawning yet. They're just moving up there to get some temperature, right? When that happens, throwing a suspending jerkbait can be a little intrusive. It's going to dive a little too deep, and a lot of times you're going to be digging into grass or the ground. You're just going to be making a lot of commotion, right? And they tend to also be a little bit noisy. So when that happens, I will switch up to a floating jerkbait. Now, my floating jerkbait of choice has been the OSP Varuna. They make a suspending version and a floating version. I really love this floater because it has the same action, almost an identical action as a 110. It's very similar in how I fish it, but it's a very easy floater to use. Nishini also has a new 115 top water jerkbait that again it's a floating jerkbait, but it's also designed to fish a little bit more around the top. Now, this wasn't out last spring. This is a pretty new one, but I'm excited to implement it and see how it works. It has a great action, so I think it's going to be a real key player this spring. So it's going to be part of my arsenal, that one specifically, since I just cracked the box. But here's the thing with a floating jerkbait. The floating jerkbait obviously allows you to control the depth, because when you pause, instead of that bait suspending, it's gonna float back up, right? So you're gonna twitch it down, it's gonna go a couple feet, and then you're gonna pause it, and it's gonna float back up to the top. So you're gonna really keep that bait in the top 2, 3, 4 foot of the column. So if you're fishing big, large, expansive flats, or you're fishing over grass, or you're fishing anywhere where you need to depth control that bait, a floater's a great way to go. So you can fish it just like a traditional jerkbait, twitch, twitch, pause, let it float back up, twitch, twitch, pause. But what I like to try to do with these baits is I like to try to twitch it just before it gets to the top of the water. We've talked about this before as well, right? So as you're twitching this, it's floating, you're gonna kind of swim it down with your reel, just kind of get it just below the surface, and I kind of twitch, twitch, right? And this thing is gonna dart down, and then it's gonna pause, and it's gonna float back to the surface. If you can get your timing right, just before it gets to the surface, if you twitch again and it goes down, it creates a little air pocket right there, okay? Right there where that bait was, and the air pocket just kind of goes boom, right? On the surface, and creates just a little bit of a boop. And there's something about that. This is a super old school technique that guys used to do in Florida with Rapalas. It's always been a great way to get early season fish, smallmouth and largemouth, right? So a lot of guys down in Florida or in some grassier areas, you know, they'll throw like prop style baits, right? A lot of times they'll just kind of rip it. And a lot of times those baits can be super effective because those fish are so shallow, right? That if you get a frog or a prop style bait or something over their heads, you know, they're right there. It's not that they really want to chase topwater. It's just that there's not a lot of water left between them and that bait. But sometimes those baits can be too intrusive, or a lot of times they see a lot of it. So, you know, when they first move up, you can run a prop style bait or a frog over their head, but then they've seen, you know, 47 boats in the last 2 days doing the same thing. A lot of times you can go behind those guys with a jerkbait and accomplish the same thing if you get your timing down, right? So you can kind of create that same kind of bloop, bloop, let it pause, bloop, twitch, twitch, right? And you're kind of getting that same idea. So a floater for me is critical. The only time a floater doesn't really work great is you're fishing a really deep, rocky lake. They don't really move up into big, shallow areas that much. Even when they move up into shallow water, it's usually on steeper banks, and that's where the suspending jerkbait comes into play. So there you go. Technique number one, definitely my starting point, a jerkbait. All right, second technique for me, and again, I'm still trying to cover water, is a swim bait. Okay, now, Jeff, relax. I don't know if you even consider this a swim bait. Okay, I know that swim bait guys have like sizes and shit, but for me, this is a swim bait. Okay, and you can grab whatever size you want. And Jeff, I'd love to hear feedback. You know, I'm gonna ask you a question here in a second. When I'm thinking of a swim bait this time of the year, I can't think of a better fish catcher all over everywhere I go than this guy. And this is a Megabass Magdraft. And this is a 6-inch Magdraft. They make these in a 6-inch, an 8-inch, a 10-inch. There's even a little 5-inch. The 6-inch size for me is kind of the magical size. Now again, go with the size and the color that's best for your area. Okay, so you might live in a place where maybe they're just trout eaters. Then I'd probably do an 8 or a 10, right? Or you might live in a place where they're smoking big gizzards. Then maybe go with an 8 or a 10. But for me, I feel like I can put a 6-inch Magdraft on and I can just cover ground. I can fish it on rocky banks. I can fish it over grass. I can fish it through sticks. I can basically fish it anywhere. What makes a Magdraft special is, and again, this is nothing new, and I know a lot of you guys know this, but just in case you're just kind of starting to get into this. By the way, a Magdraft weighs about an ounce. So it's a relatively easy bait to throw around. It doesn't wear you out all day. It fishes just like any other bait would do. What makes a Magdraft special is the draft that comes off the bait as it swims. Okay, there are 9 gazillion different paddle tail swim baits, as you guys know. Every brand makes one, right? A bait like this has been produced by pretty much every company out there and continues to be produced because it's so effective, right? But what makes this one special is that draft that comes off the bait that those fish feel that just almost forces them to eat it. There's just something magical about it. It's just one of those baits, right? Now, for me, albino pearl shad is almost always my starting point. Whiteback shad would be next. If somewhere where it's muddy, then I'll go with like an IU or maybe a perch or a trout kind of color. Even if there's no trout, don't be afraid to throw Megabass trout patterns. They're basically just albino pearl shad with some dots on it. Okay, they're not really trout patterns. So there you go. I can tell you guys, the biggest thing with the Magdraft is you have to find the sweet speed. Okay, so all of these will have a kind of a magical speed to them. If you go too slow, they don't really move, and if you go too fast, they turn on their side and they don't swim right. You have to find that magical speed, and once you do, that head vibrates side to side like this while that tail's kicking. And so you just get this crazy action that the fish are feeling. It's just a supernatural way of doing it. Now, for me, you've got the Magdraft and you have the Magdraft Freestyle. Okay, and this question gets asked to me a lot. When do you throw the Magdraft? When do you throw the Magdraft Freestyle? Now, the Freestyle is an unrigged version that typically I would rig with like an 8/0 beast hook. Now, I would say for myself, probably 90% of the time that I fish the Freestyle, I fish it on this hook, which is an 8/0 flashy swimmer. Okay, it has a little blade on it. The reason I do that is then it forces this bait to stay down deeper in the water. Okay, with this guy, no matter how deep you throw this, right, you throw it out there and you let it sink for 12 minutes down into 60 feet, the second you turn the handle, this thing is going like this. Whoop. Right? So this is a shallow water jerkbait. It's gonna really stay probably from the surface, maybe 5 or 6 feet max, right? It's really gonna be the top of the column. It's a bait the fish are gonna see coming and they're gonna eat up. But if I want my Magdraft to be down deeper, maybe I'm fishing a deeper lake, maybe there's a big deep grass pile, for whatever reason, that's when I'll go to the Freestyle. Okay, so it's not necessarily about this being weedless and this having an open hook. I don't even care about that because this is such an easy bait to control. It's not like I'm going to be getting snagged all the time. And if I do get snagged, I'll just go over and pop it up. But if you learn how to cast, 99% of the time you can avoid snags, right? So it's really just depth control. Shallow, deep. That's how I choose between the two. Coloring, the same. Usually albino pearl shad is my starting point. Then whiteback shad, then I can mix in an MB gizzard if the water's really clear, IU, perch, something like that. Jeff, if you were just gonna kind of run bank with a swim bait, is a Magdraft a good option for you in your world?
When I was throwing the Magdraft, I was obviously throwing the 10-inch a lot. What was really nice about throwing the Magdraft is I could throw it anywhere and everywhere, especially the way that I rigged it. So the cool thing was there would be times when I wanted to fish it high over grass, right? And you could fish it in grass, boom, you get bit. And you're like, cool, they're here. And then maybe, 30 yards down, you want to fish a rock pile. I was able to throw it out there in the rock pile and fish it deep. Oh, I wanted to fish in the marina or under a dock. I can skip it and keep it high. Like, there's a lot of different applications of where you can fish a Magdraft, where some other swim baits are better suited for like one specific thing. Where like you have a HUD or like a Magnum where it's like, I really just fish that thing on the bottom, right? You can fish it up top, but I feel like it really excels on the bottom. And there's other baits like a glide bait, you can fish it high, but you can't really fish it down deep without snagging. Like the Magdraft gets bit, it's super simple to use.
Yeah,
you're right about the speed though. If you don't get the speed down, you're gonna think it's garbage. But once you find that sweet spot and you can feel it on the cast out there, you're like, all right, it's not rolling, I'm not going too slow, I'm feeling the right kick. That's when you know you're probably about to get smoked.
Yep.
And it's just a really good bait.
What I would, let me add two things. One, can we share a link to one of your Magdraft videos?
Yeah.
In case anybody's not familiar with your channel. I want them to be able to see maybe the rigging that you do or just how you're approaching that 10-inch.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's different than what we're talking about with the 6, right? A little bit different approach. But I'd love people to be able to keep going down the rabbit hole if they want to.
Yeah.
So throw that up there somewhere. Second thing is, I can't tell you how important it is to get in sync with how this thing moves. Okay, so what I do literally every time out, even if I've been throwing the Magdraft every day, right, and I'm fishing every day of the week, I make a short little 10-foot cast, and I remind myself my speed. Okay, this is critical for me to have a 6-to-1 or a 7-to-1 gear ratio on this. If you're trying to throw this thing on an 8-to-1, you're fucked. I mean, I just don't think you can go slow enough, or maybe you can, but there's something in your head, like you kind of need to keep winding, but if you go too fast, it just doesn't move. So I would recommend making shorter flips, shorter little pitches, and just kind of figure out where your speed is, right? The bait should be going straight, okay? It needs to be tracking straight. So after you kind of get in tune with that, okay, cool, that's there. Make a cast, maintain that speed, but get used to what that bait is feeling like on the rod, okay? Whatever vibration or thumping or feedback it's giving you, get used to that, because the second you stop feeling that, one of two things is happening. Either you're going too fast and it forces you to slow down, or something just ate it. And I would bet probably at least half of the bites I get on this, the fish eat it like this and push it forward, or they eat it from the side and push it forward. It's not like where it just jerks the rod out of your hand. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's a thunk. It's like, oh hell yeah, right? But most of the time, you've made a cast and you're just swimming it, and you feel the vibration, and then something just changes and it's not vibrating the same, and it's because a fish ate it and pushed it forward, and you've lost the feel. And so what you want to do when that happens is, like, instantly you have to decide, was that a bite or did I go too fast, right? And if you think it was a bite, I just turn. And most of the time, just that turn is all you need for a hook set. You don't have to jack them and hammer them with this thing, because it's got an exposed treble hook on it, right? So this is a really small bait for a normal sized fish to put in their mouth. And when they do, the hook's gonna get them, okay? So just try to get in tune. Make sure that you're going the right speed. You'll have a lot of success. Of course, you can alter these. So if you want to stick nail weights in them so that you can increase your speed, you can. If you're winding it faster and it's rolling to the right, you can use the nail weights to kind of counterbalance it. If it rolls to the left, you can use the nail weights to counterbalance it and try to find a true balance. Decoy makes this cool little like twist lock screw thing that we use sometimes, where we'll literally just twist it right there on the front of the hook, or right here on the front underneath the chin is a great spot to where it wraps around that harness, and it allows you to track it a little bit faster. So there's some tools you can use to increase the speed. I'd say probably 90% of the time I just take it out of the package and throw it. You know what I mean? So there you go. Number 2 for me is a swim bait. Now, staying in that swim bait lane for a minute, if I'm smallmouth fishing, okay, so I'm up north, they'll definitely eat this. Okay, so if you're a smallmouth guy, don't be afraid to throw this. They will 100% eat this thing. But in March, April, well, probably not March, April, May, the May is kind of your early spring still, the smallmouth crack is this. So if you just want to go out and catch every fish in the whole lake, this is what you need to be throwing. Okay, so I'm kind of including this as a swim bait. So this combo is just retarded for brown fish. This is the Megabass Okashira Screwhead Spark Shad combo. Now this is made in 2 sizes, a 16th ounce and an 1/8 ounce. I will tell you, I use the 2 about 50% of the time. Like, we're split right down the middle. If those fish are shallower than 5 feet, you cannot beat a 16th ounce. And I know that seems crazy, like an 1/8 ounce is pretty light, but an 1/8 ounce on this actually sinks pretty far. So that little prop really kind of keeps that bait keeled. So if you make a cast and it lands and you're straightening your line and winding in and getting it tight, by the time you've done that and that bait sunk 6-7 feet, it's not really gonna come up. It's staying down there. So you're just dragging on the bottom, where that 16th ounce will stay a little bit higher, and then it'll stay a little higher over the top of them. This is just a deadly, deadly way of getting them. Probably the only bait you need if you live in Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Ohio, New York. Like, this would kind of be like the Senko for down south. Like, probably the only thing you need is a Senko, but it's pretty boring to just catch them on a Senko all the time. So keep that in mind. I would just mix up your colors. Natural colors for me, Royal Gill and Reel are kind of the no-brainer. Huo, something bright like the Sight Chartreuse, say pink, would be a great option in the spring as well. So give that a try if you're a smallmouth guy. Okay, So third thing for me is going to be a square bill. So this is where I guess you don't have to decide, but some guys will go towards a square bill and some guys will go towards a chatterbait. Okay. For me, I just have so much confidence in crankbaits. Jeff and I talk about this all the time. Majority of my big fish have come on a crankbait. I just feel like a crankbait draws a bigger bite, and I just have a lot of confidence in a crankbait. I love fishing them. They're just so fun to use, right? So, for me, you got to start somewhere, right? So this is kind of the bait that now, from this point on, as long as those fish are shallow, this is staying on my rods. This is the Deps Evoke. So there are 9 gazillion different square bills out there. You hear us talk about a lot of them, from the Lucky Craft LC to the OSP Blitz to the Megabass Sonic Side, so on and so forth, right? The Deps Evoke is a special one for fishing around anything snaggy. And that's basically how I'm breaking down my square bills. What am I putting that bait into? If all I'm doing is fishing rocky bank, I'm probably just gonna throw like maybe the LC. Because it's a great for just grinding in the rocks and bouncing around, or the Blitz, something like that. Something where you just kind of bang it around. But what I'm looking for this time of the year is I'm looking for those fish that are moving from the deep water and they're pushing shallow, and they're going to kind of lock onto something. They're not really roaming out and about yet. They're wanting to lock onto something, right? That could be a laydown, it could be a tree, that could be a stump. Usually for us, it's something wooded, right? And there is not a better crankbait in the world for coming through wood than this guy right here. Literally, I will look for the gnarliest, nastiest shit and put this bait right into the middle and let it bang around down there. Every once in a while, I mean, there's 6 barbs. So every once in a while, you know, it'll snag on something, but 99 out of 100 times, it finds a way to bounce and deflect and come right through the nastiest stuff. And it lets me put a bait into places where nobody else is putting them. Okay, so there are 5 different sizes of Evoke. The 2 that are critical for me are these 2. I love all the sizes, but for this time of the year, the 1.2 and 2.0, these are the no-brainers. So the 1.2 I will throw a lot. This is an 11 gram, by the way, so it's about a 3/8 of an ounce. This is kind of the starting point for me that I will throw when I feel like they're really keyed in on still eating. So if they're eating bait, if they're eating little bluegills, and I feel like there's a little bit of a aggressiveness to them, I love the 1.2. I think it's the best one to just get some kind of strike out of, right? If I feel like they're not really eating and they're more kind of, I don't know, lethargic, cold, just chilling, then I go up to the 2.0. The 2.0 is 18 grams, so it's about a 5/8 ounce, still only 66 millimeters, not that big, but it just gives me a little bit more body, a little bit more presence to kind of bang around in there and just draw some kind of reaction. Now, all of the Evokes are built, by the way, as a single chambered cavity. There's no sound to any of them, right? So it's a totally silent bait, but it vibrates super hard. So even the small one is giving you a vibration feedback almost like a small jackhammer would, right? When you pause it, it's designed to be super buoyant like a balsa bait, and then go. So basically, when Kenta designed these, he designed them to act like a balsa crankbait, which has historically been, you know, the go-to crankbait for this style fishing. But the challenge to balsa is that they are inconsistent from bait to bait to bait because most of them are still hand carved. There's no like true refinement to the process. So a lot of times you'd have to buy 4 or 5 or 6 crankbaits to find one that actually went true or that matched the action of the one that was working. The idea with the Evoke is that they're all going to have the same action. So if you start catching them on this, I could walk over the wall and take another one off and it's going to have the same action, right? Which is great. They come stock with Ryugi trebles, so you don't have to change anything out of them. It's a super dope bait. Color-wise, when I'm in that smaller one, I really like the white colors. Blackback Shad, Sexy Shad, Horizon Shad, Chartreuse Back, something with like a more of a whiter tone. In the bigger ones, a lot of times I like the white colors as well, like the Blackback Shad, but I also like to mix in some chartreuses, some reds. This is where like a chartreuse blue, a gunmetal, you know, a red type color can really have some impact because again, I'm kind of using this size to really just kind of draw a strike, draw a trigger, some kind of trigger mechanism out of them, and I find that, you know, a chartreuse color is a really good one for that. Now, If you're not fishing around wood and you're fishing around grass, okay, which I know a lot of you guys have, and I want a bait to kind of get in grass and rip it out, you can use the Evoke. Okay, it rips out fine. But for me, for grass, these are the two that I almost always have on. So this is the Megabass S Crank. This is the Megabass Sonic Side. Now, they're, again, gazillions of options here. So use the ones that you like. What I like about these is the Sonic Side I can fish really fast. And sometimes even though the fish might be kind of chilled out, the water might be cold, they still react to a fast lure. All right, they might be in little wolf packs. Jeff, you're just fishing. We were talking about the fish being schooled up. Sometimes going faster will trigger one of those fish, right? Maybe there's 5 of them and 4 of them are lazy bums and one of them's a go-getter. You go fast, you can get the go-getter, and then sometimes you can fire up the other 4 bums and get 2 or 3 out of the school, right? So this is a really good one for doing that. The S Crank is a bait that is probably the worst at cover deflection in the store, okay? If you get this within 5 feet of a piece of wood, you're snagged, I can guarantee you. But it has an amazing open water action and is amazing around grass and aquatic vegetation. The shape of the bait forces it to kind of be hunting as it moves through, and it doesn't need deflection to trigger a strike. A lot of times with an Evoke, you kind of have to bang it into something for the fish to eat it. If you're just winding it through open water, they just let it go by. This is one of those baits where you can kind of wind it through open water, and because of how it's moving, the fish will trigger. So great ones to add. 1.5 is kind of my go-to size. There's a 1.2 that's smaller, a 2.0 that's pretty big. So again, if you guys are fishing around really lethargic fish, the 2.0 might be kind of cool. But the 1.5 is just a good, easy size. It's ½ ounce, easy to throw. So there you go. Square bill for sure. Number 3, I would venture that majority of my biggest fish this time of the year are going to come on that. Either on the Magdraft or the square bill. Jerkbait, sometimes we'll get some giants. Smallmouth territory. I mean, I watched you catch your PB last year on a jerkbait. Jerkbait's a great way to catch a giant one too, but if I know there's some big ones laying around, I would rather have them hooked on a Magdraft or an Evoke than on a jerkbait. Just my land ratio is better, my line can be bigger. By the way, on the square bill, almost always 20 pound for me. You can go down to 14 or 16 if you feel like you need more depth, but I'm trying to throw this into the nastiest shit possible. So I'm going 18, 20 pounds, something like that, pretty heavy. On the Magdraft, 20 pound, if I know I'm fishing around disgusting cover, 16 pound is way better. So you get a much better swim, and I can see Jeff shaking his head. Yes, you agree?
Yeah.
So the lighter the line you go on the Magdraft, the easier it is for that bait to go at the correct speed and stay tracked true, right? When you go to a heavier line like 20 pound, it kind of screws up the action a little bit, right? So you kind of have to find that balance. If you know where you're using it in some nasty shit, dude, go with a heavier line and jack them, right? But if you're not sure, you're fishing more open water, dude, 16 pound is great, and it'll give you a lot better swim, okay? Jerkbait, by the way, we didn't talk about that. On the suspending jerkbait, almost always 10 for me. I will go to 12 or 14 on the Rudra. On the floater, almost always 12. Kind of my go-to, okay? So it gives me just a little bit more lift on it. I'm not so concerned with the line being thin enough for the bait to get down, so there you go. All right, next one. This is one that is probably one of the funnest ways to catch them, and that's flipping, okay? So we all love to flip this time of the year, and those fish move up. If you're fishing, you know, anywhere where there's shallow cover, there's an opportunity to flip. Whether it's muddy water, clean water, whatever, right? There's flip fish to be had. Now, 9 gazillion different flip baits on the market. You can make this as complicated or as simple as you want. I like complicated, all right? I like to catch fish on 9 gazillion different things and rabbit hole myself to death. But day in and day out, I break this down into 2 very easy ways. Pre-spawn, post-spawn. When they're pre-spawn, I don't think there's a better bait in the world than this guy right here. This is the Reaction Innovations Sweet Beaver. So this bait has been around for ages. It continues to dominate in my arsenal. There's just something simple to it that works really well this time of year. Remember, pre-spawn, those fish are still a little bit lethargic, a little kind of freaked out. They're probably not sure why they're so shallow. So many things happening, right? A lot more fishermen, a lot more casts, a lot more shit happening in the shallows. The beaver is just a very easy bait to come through cover. It glides easy, but there's nothing really intrusive about a beaver. Okay, there's no big tentacles or claws flapping or anything real noisy. It just kind of does its thing, right? Supernatural. So it kind of matches the mood a lot of times of the fish. Sometimes if you go in there right away with a big brush hog or, you know, some kind of crawl with crazy arms or whatever, you're freaking them out. Like, they know that shit going like down. It's like, fuck no, I ain't eating that thing, right? So beaver for me is a go-to. A 3/0 hook fits great on this. I like a straight shank. You can do whatever you like. You're fishing around a lot of wood. You might want to do more of a EWG style, like a haymaker or jungle flipping or something like that. Color-wise, I keep it super simple. This is my go-to color. This is Juicy. Okay, it's basically watermelon red, which is the key ingredient here. Watermelon red pre-spawn is a no-brainer if you're fishing clear to slightly stained water. Juicy adds some kind of candy flake in it too. So it's watermelon red candy in essence, right? So that's kind of always my starting point. If my water is super funky, like it's real muddy, like this year we got a lot of mud, then I'm doing one of these two colors. Something with chartreuse in it. So this is Dirty Sanchez, which is just a green pumpkin chartreuse, or some kind of black and blue. Okay, I keep it super simple. There's 9 gazillion colors. Knock yourself out. Dive down whatever rabbit hole you want to go down. You guys might live in an area like I know, like in Florida, Houdini is money. Junebug is money. You try to throw Houdini here, they're probably not going to eat it that well, right? So there are certain colors that match regionally, so use those. But if you're looking for a good starting point, this basically gets you everything covered. The Juicy, Dirty Sanchez, black, blue, you're kind of done. Now, post-spawn, you can keep throwing the beaver. I mean, you can throw the beaver whenever they're going to eat a beaver, throw the beaver, right? Usually what I'll do is as the fish move to post-spawn, I'll add a punch skirt. Okay, so the punch skirt helps me add a little bit more bulk. It seems to trigger better strikes. It just gives a little bit more of an appearance of something alive and falling. It gives me a little bit more movement without switching to like a crazy brush hog or something that's moving like crazy. Then once the water temp goes a little higher, then I kind of switch to more of a brush hog style bait, right? Something that's got a lot of movement to it, a lot of whatever action it is that they're relating to. That's when I'll go to that, okay? All right, and then finally, I don't do this that much anymore, but this is a really fun way to catch them. And I know a lot of you guys still love bed fishing or sight fishing. A lot of you guys live in places where you might have to sight fish, especially if you're tournament fishing, or you know, sometimes those fish get so keyed in on spawn that they just won't chase anything else. You almost have to sight fish them, right? So I'm just going to touch base on a few of my favorite sight fishing type, you know, items. And again, I kind of look for those pre and post just because I almost start feeling bad for those fish, right? I guess when you're fresh on them, it's kind of really cool. But if you're the 4th or 5th or 6th guy through a cove and you catch a fish and half his lip is hanging off and there's holes in his head, like you start feeling bad for him, right? But if you want to sight fish, okay, this is smallmouth crack. Okay, you put this around a fish anywhere close to a bed, it's done. Okay, so this is the Megabass Hazedong Shad. This one doesn't even have to be on a bed.
I've literally seen them go 15 feet off the bed to eat it.
Yeah, like you just throw it anywhere close. Even in the same cove. Oh, there's spawning fish over there. I'm gonna throw it over here. They'll swim for it. Oh, they'll come for it. On it. Yeah, oh, he's got it. So same with both of these guys. A lot of you guys catch them year round on this one. I do catch them year round on this one, so I'm a huge fan. No hook drop shot, right? Just swim it right to the bed. When it gets to the bed, they've probably already eaten it. If they haven't, just shake it there, bend, they'll eat it, okay? So that's kind of a no-brainer. For largemouth guys, you can definitely throw that and they'll eat it. But typically for me, largemouth tend to do a lot of their spawning around shit. So around a tree, around something that requires maybe a little heavier line, right? So I'm usually doing more of a weedless presentation. And so I'm doing something like this. So the OSP Dolive Stick is kind of a go-to for me. I like the 3.5 size. It's not too big, it's not too small. Jeff, we should just do a kind of a bed fishing episode again, maybe, and show some techniques that will help through the season. But again, the big key to bed fishing usually is being able to see your bait. So that's why you're seeing a lot of whites, chartreuses, pinks. We do a special run color of Roboworm. It's called 24 Karat Magic. It's kind of a great kind of chartreuse and white kind of color that shows up really good. Any of these would be good options. Almost always for me, it's rigged on a drop shot. That allows the weight to stay in the bed and allows me to kind of lift the bait up and down so that it's not moving out of the bed. Sometimes I'll put it on a Texas rig and kind of really drag it on the bottom. But, you know, any of those would be good options for you if you guys are moving into that sight fishing time of the year. All right, guys, so that is a wrap. There is a look at the 5 ways that I try to catch fish this time of the year. Hopefully that was useful. If you guys have any questions on the baits that we discussed, the techniques, how we're using them, where we're using them, drop it down below and I'll definitely get answers for you. Jeff will leave links to the products if you guys want to check any of them out closer. And if there's anything that's working good for you guys this time of the year that I didn't mention but you want other guys to know about, drop that down in the comments as well, and let's collectively share and let's all be the best early spring fishermen we can be. Jeff, how does that sound?
I like that.
That's good. On behalf of myself and that guy over there and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle, guys, thank you for the time. Thank you for watching these videos.